We're not live. People aren't actually seeing us live.
Yeah, but we're not going to edit, so don't say anything silly. Ha ha ha. Actually, and this will be on the video now, so let's get it started here. Miguel Durrani for the CRP, and that's Anthony Scott Pirate. We're getting together here, testing some new software, and also getting ready to make picks for boxing, as always. Big boxing fight this Saturday, October 26th, coming to us overseas from the UK, and what we've got is the conclusion of the 140-pound World Boxing Super Series. We've got Regis Prograis going over to take on Josh Taylor, a major fight at 140 pounds, probably the number one and number two guys, or the number one and number two prospects coming up in this weight class, in many people's opinion. And it's a terrific fight. A couple other interesting fights on the undercard. 7 fights overall at the sport books. We're going to go over a couple of them, 3 of them, with our guru, Anthony Scott Pyatt. ASP, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, my man. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure when you join me as well. Some fun stuff today. I've got some interesting bets. As those of you that follow it, betting has been legalized in Indiana, so I can do online. Gives me a lot more access to the online prop bets and the overs and the unders and a lot of different things. So I'm not going to get into the details of that too much, other than to let you know I'm going to be very specific about the calls if I think they're going to be a decision or a knockout, and I'll try and tell you which round so that you can plug that information in if you live in a state or a country that you can make some of these fun bets. So that's kind of what we're doing at Wage Rage. Very similar format to what we've always been doing. I'm still going to call the underdogs and the dog watches and the dog picks, but I'll try and be pretty specific. We've got an under that I'm calling later on. So just a little update, and happy to be here, Miguel.
Well, the fights this weekend are coming to us from England, so you definitely want to check your local start times. They're popping up on DAZN. So DAZN delivering the World Boxing Super Series final here with Regis Prograis and Taylor. Prograis coming in right now, minus 140 favorite. Taylor plus 120. It's been about that all week, maybe a little different from the numbers you're looking at, but that's our basis for conversation. The over-under there, 10.5, with the over at minus 320 and the under at plus 260. So people expect this one to go the distance, I guess. How do you see this?
Yeah, I'm going along that line as well. This is the 9th title fight for Josh Taylor. This guy is a beast, an Irishman. He's got wins against Victor Postel and Ivan Barancek. He's a southpaw with a strong jab. You know, his lead right hooks to the body, so he'll jab and then hook. All of that's really good. Left uppercut can definitely drop guys. A lot of different punches. He's got what it takes. However, he's fighting another southpaw who has a little bit more experience, 24-0 with 20 knockouts. Regis Prograis, I think, has that sparkle to him and has to be considered the favorite in this fight. By description, they're very similar fighters. Prograis also a southpaw. He's got a better left hook, though. He's a good ring presence, great footwork, fast moves. He can kind of move his torso and his head real well and avoid stuff. And so I think those are a couple adds that Josh Taylor doesn't have as well. He's more of an Irish fighter in that he's not trying to really back up or get out of the way. He'll take the punch and give it back a little bit more. I do like his footwork. But if I have to differentiate the two, Regis Prograis has a little bit more of that body work, movement, probably better speed. So if his defense can get through and hold on, Prograis takes this to later rounds. And I do have it by decision as well. So you can't argue with the over. 10.5 is a negative 285. So there's no real reason to bet that. But I don't think it's going to go under the 10.5 for the plus 225 on your money. So really, this is just a fight that's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be close. I wouldn't be disagreeing with somebody if they bet Josh Taylor at around a plus 200 or a plus 250. But I don't see myself making that call for you. Prograis by decision.
And then moving into the rest of the undercard, we've got an interesting bout at heavyweight, and you've got a couple of British retreads meeting here, and that's David Price and Dereck Chisora. Chisora obviously has been through the mill, fought everybody, and coming off recent series of fights with Dillian White that, got him back on the map, and he's had some success that he's trying to build off on. David Price, still hanging on, after the types of knockouts that he's experienced in his career. I'd like to see him hang it up. But he's a former bronze medalist. The problem with Price to me is that, he's 6'10", and, in your early 20s when you're 6'10", and you've got a lot of mobility and stuff like that, you could be a force, and he won a bronze medal. As he grew up, so to speak, he became slow. And, unfortunately, he's been hit. And unfortunately, they've discovered, he got his head at the same place Amir Khan got his head. So, it becomes a problem because the knockouts he's experienced are ugly knockouts and not the kind of knockouts you want to see. And he's experienced a few of them. So, he's a plus 330 underdog at my, on the notes here. Dereck Chisora, the favorite here, up to 4-1 in some places. The over-under set at 6.5 with the over at minus 120 and the under at plus 100. What numbers are you looking at?
I'm looking at pretty similar numbers. These are a little bit earlier in the week. Had David Price insignificantly different at plus 380 and a negative 475 for Dereck Chisora. On the under 6.5, which I'm definitely going to talk about with you, I'm at plus 110 at the time that I'm making these calls. So, but even plus 100, there's possibly some wisdom to that bet. Let me break that down for you. First off, Chisora, you're right. He's lost to Dillian White a couple of times. Hubert Pulev, Tyson Fury. He lost 3 in a row. David Haye, Vitaly Klitschko, Robert Helenius. His first loss was to actually Tyson Fury, who he's lost to twice. So 9 losses, only 3 of them by knockout. That's kind of interesting. With 22 knockout wins. Price, on the other hand, he last fought David Allen. A lot of people thought both of them were kind of a little over the hill and thought Price would lose. Price was the underdog in that fight, and he fought a great fight, and he won that fight the way he wins the fights that he does win. The long arms, the height that you mentioned, the jabs. He wins them on points with that amateur background. However, and note the knockout rounds here because we're going to talk about this as a bet. Sergey Kuzmin knocked him out in round 4. Povatkin in 5. Hammer in 7. Erkin Tepper in 2. Tony Thompson both in 2 and in 5. Now, Tony Thompson was 2013, I think. So even when David Price was younger and hadn't been hit as many times, it wasn't slowing down a little bit. He was knocked out in round 2 and 5 in the 2 fights with Tony Thompson. So I thought he was winning in the past couple fights, but he did look pretty good against David Allen. I think that was a matchup thing. All 6 of David Price's losses have been by knockout. So I think Price is bitten off a little more than he can chew here. I'm glad he's getting a little bit of a payday. Maybe he has a chance to prove us wrong. But if you think of those knockouts that I mentioned and you look at under 6.5 for a plus 110 on my end, plus 100 on yours, under 6.5 rounds, in the 6 times he's been knocked out, he's only made it to the 7th round once. I'm not even sure why this line is like this. It is a very strong suggestion from me that you bet the under 6.5. I really believe that Chisora wins this by knockout, and he does it in the 5th round, 4th round.
All right. And, definitely a pick, the Price knockouts, too. I mean, you can go back and look at them. They're not pretty knockouts. Even the Tony Thompson ones. And the thing Thompson, when he ran into Thompson was already in his 40s and a very savvy veteran, and Price just bit off more than he could chew. The thing I don't like about the Thompson performance is, if I remember correctly, I think Thompson actually improved on his performance and knocked him out in 2 the second time.
I believe you're right, actually. Yeah.
So, when that happens, you're not catching up, so to speak. So it's one of those things where, Tony Thompson was never a world beater either, although, definitely, like I said, a crafty and dangerous veteran at the end of his career. I don't think anybody wanted to fight him, and it was the message he sent with the David Price series that made Thompson that kind of feared veteran for a little while there in the early part of the decade. But, Price, with the Erkan Tepper one, They were trying to wake him up for a long time after that. So, you got to really analyze him. And if another knockout like that comes, I'd be really looking at, how the British Boxing Board of Control would even license that guy.
Yeah, and I'm looking that up. It was Saturday, July 6th of 2013 against Tony Thompson was the 5-round knockout. So I believe it was February 23rd of 2013 was the 2-round knockout. But nonetheless, both of them before the under 6.5 that we're calling. And David Price was a much younger guy 6 years ago.
You got to remember, like I said, Thompson was one of those guys that if you beat Thompson, you're in the glory, right? So, he lost the first fight, and I apologize about getting mixed up there, but he lost the first fight. And then, you don't, I didn't like the way he accepted that loss because he, campaigned for a rematch, so I'll beat him, it's like he didn't take the lesson learned. And, Thompson did it to him again in 5, and it was basically a very similar type of performance where, Thompson just played the game until Price made a mistake, and then boom. And,
and he's never recovered well. Have you noticed that, Miguel? Anytime David Price gets rocked,
he
never seems to get his feet again.
Very much like Amir Khan, he shows it, that's one of the things is, when a fighter's hurt, if he's able to to hide that in some way, shape, or form, or it doesn't show so visibly, that's what you want. But unfortunately, when the legs go and you're starting to, hobble about the ring like Khan and, Price does as well, then unfortunately, you're going to have a headhunter on your hands there looking for you because they know you're hurt.
That's it. So yeah, I see this one under 6.5, and I'm really pretty strong on that. I'll be disappointed if it doesn't happen. The fact that it's a plus or even an even 100 with you is very surprising to me. Looking at the history of these two fighters.
Hey, let's go ahead and take a peek at the last of the fights that we have here on offer, and we got a couple of British veterans also, and this one comes to us at lightweight, and that's Lee Selby taking on Ricky Burns. How you looking at this one?
It's a kind of fairly interesting fight in that I do have a fairly interesting call, but I don't think it's going to be an exciting fight necessarily. I mean, if you look at Ricky Burns, he lost to Anthony Crolla, Julius Ndongo, Omar Figueroa Jr., Terrence Crawford. He did lose to him, but those are good fighters. He drew with Raimundo Beltran, and he won against Roman Martinez all the way back in 2010, though. But he won against Roman Martinez, right? So that's Ricky Burns, 43-7-1 with 16 knockouts only. Out of those, 51 fights, he's only had 16 knockouts. Now, he's never been knocked out. Keep that in mind. Lee Selby, 27-2, only 9 knockouts in his 29 fights. He's never been knocked out. Okay, we got that out of the way because it's coming. He did lose in his 5th fight to a 1-0-1 Samir Moiname. He's now 18-2-1 with only 5 knockouts. And he lost 2 fights ago to Josh Warrington, who's 26-0. I don't expect a knockout in this one. Burns, here's the thing. Burns has fought better competition, but he's lost to most of them. He beat Roman Martinez. He tied Raimundo Beltran. So Lee Selby hasn't fought those type of guys. My prediction is if Lee fought Anthony Crolla, Julius Ndongo, Omar Figueroa Jr., Terrence Crawford, those would all be losses for Lee Selby too. So to me, these guys have the same record, 27-2, 43-7. When you look at who they fought, I might even give Ricky. Now, Ricky's the underdog at plus 135. I don't think it's a high enough number to take him as a straight-out underdog. I think Selby by split decision. If I was forced to pick, it'd be Selby by split decision. But because of that split decision, if you were to take, again, with these new prop bets, I don't always think in hundreds. Now I can think of $10 because I'm on the computer or whatnot. Just simple. $10 on a draw wins me $400. So with these guys, I'm thinking it's going to be a split decision. Nobody's knocking anybody out in this fight. That's the least likely thing to happen is a knockout. And neither one is a better fighter than the other, really, when it comes down to just being a pure boxer. So I think it's a split decision, maybe slightly give the edge to Selby. But why not bet the draw on this one? $10 wins you $300 or $400. Do you happen to have the draw odds in front of you? I was at somewhere over plus 3,000 when I found it.
I don't have that in front of me right now, but I've got in that particular match the over/under coming in at minus 550 for indicative of it going the full distance, and I'm catching Selby at minus 190 on the win. Burns at plus 165, so it might be a little more appealing. These are maybe later numbers than the ones earlier in the week that we were looking at. So, plus 165 money appears to have come in on Selby.
Then you might take a look at that. If it continues to go up like that between now and the next day or two when this fight happens, or next day, I guess, you might take a look at Ricky Burns on that. I'd like him at plus 200 or 250. I doubt it's going to get that high. But I might take him at a plus 175, hedging that, like I said, as little as $10 on the draw can win you $300 or $400.
Yep.
My dog thinks so too.
That's the deal. That usually seals the deal. You better get your money on the line there. There are a couple other fights coming up from that card. It's a big card at the O2 Arena in London, so you're going to get other fights at the sport books. You might want to look at Conor Benn, the young welterweight, second generation son of Nigel Benn, and he's coming along, still a perfect record. He's a minus 2,000 favorite facing Steve Jamoye, but he's beginning to get into the situation where there's probably 15-0 at this point or somewhere around there if I had to guess. And, we're going to start hearing more about Conor Benn in the next couple of years. So a couple other fights on the undercard, but we have a couple of suggestions and bets and new twists with the laws being passed in the United States and things. ASP keeping us on top of the whole thing. How do you feel? Any closing words?
Sorry, I missed that last part.
Closing words.
No, hey, I'm just happy to be doing this and evolving it and whatnot. A shout out to that Flyover Podcast Conference. They also gave us some tips and pointers. So thanks to our loyal subscribers and followers and whatnot. And stick with us. We're going to be implementing some changes as we go forward to reach broader audiences and get more of these tips out there. So happy to be on this journey with you, Miguel.
A lot of fun, and definitely looking forward to talking after the fights. These fights are definitely worth watching, especially the Prograis Taylor fight. You're talking about maybe the top two guys in a weight class. You're talking about an appealing weight class right at 140 where, it's where Terrence Crawford ruled before moving up to welterweight. These guys are trying to follow in those footsteps. The bottom line is Crawford's now in his 30s. Neither of these guys are. This is the next guys, or could be the next guys, and want to stake their claim for that with a win on Saturday. So definitely well worth watching these fights.
Absolutely.
Check your local listings on DAZN. Please hit like and subscribe. I'm Miguel Durrani and ASP for the CRP.